She was just an 11-year-old girl walking home on a dusty Georgia road. He was a millionaire CEO, furious and stranded beside his broken-down Mustang. What happened next would uncover a secret buried for over a decade, a secret powerful men paid millions to keep hidden. When Amaia Foster offered to help fix his car, Declan Voss nearly laughed. What could a little black girl in a faded hoodie possibly know about a Shelby GT500 engine? But the moment she rolled up her sleeves, his world began to unravel. Because on her finger was a ring antique gold, a blue sapphire glinting in the sun that he'd only ever seen once before. 12 years ago, on the hand of a little girl who vanished without a trace. Who was Amaia Foster? Really? Why did her mother run from a facility that was supposed to protect children like her? And what secrets lie inside the ring that powerful men would destroy lives to bury? This isn't just a story about a car. It's a story about power, identity, and a girl who dared to fix more than machines. She fixed a broken system. If this story moves you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's begin. The sun beat down on the cracked 2-lane road that cut through Marigold Springs like a faded scar. The air smelled of honeysuckle and hot asphalt. Dust swirled in the wake of a breeze that barely touched the ground. It was late afternoon, and Amaia Foster, 11 years old and full of quiet strength, was walking home from school like she did every weekday. Her backpack, second-hand and patched, was heavy with books and an old toolkit she never left behind. Her mom used to say, "Knowing how things work makes you powerful, baby." Amaia had always believed that. She walked with purpose. Her canvas shoes were worn thin at the toes, and her curly hair was tied into a single, messy braid. Her expression, as usual, was calm, like the world had taught her long ago not to show too much of what she felt. She wasn't the type of kid people remembered right away, but those who did never forgot her. That's when she saw it, a gleaming midnight blue Mustang Shelby GT500 parked crookedly on the side of Orchard Road. Its hood was popped open, steam curling lazily from the engine like smoke from a tired dragon. A man in a tailored navy suit paced beside the car, one hand gripping his phone, the other running furiously through his silvery hair. From a distance, he looked like a misplaced executive from another world, a world with air-conditioned offices and espresso machines, not gravel roads and rusted stop signs. As Amaia drew closer, she could hear him shouting, "I don't care if it's Sunday. Get someone out here. I have a dinner in Atlanta with the Walton Group in 2 hours." He checked a sleek gold watch on his wrist and muttered something under his breath that sounded expensive. Amaia hesitated. Her mother, Elena Foster, may she rest in peace, had always warned her, if someone looks like they've never stepped foot in your neighborhood, keep walking. But something in the man's voice, not just frustration, but real desperation, made her pause. She adjusted the strap on her shoulder. The toolkit inside shifted with a familiar clink. Her grandfather had given it to her before he passed, said a good wrench could open more doors than a fancy degree. Amaia stepped forward, her voice calm but clear. "Excuse me, sir. Looks like you're having some car trouble." The man stopped mid-rant, staring at her. He squinted, maybe from the sun, maybe from disbelief. He saw a small black girl, maybe barely 5 feet tall, in oversized jeans and a faded T-shirt that read, "Future Engineer," a shirt that once belonged to her mother. The man raised an eyebrow. "That's kind of you, but this isn't a toy car. It's a high-performance V8, not something you fix with a shoelace and a smile." Amaia tilted her head slightly, unfazed. "I wasn't planning on using either." but I know a radiator hose leak when I see one." The man blinked. "You're, what, 11? Almost 12, she replied. "I help my uncle fix engines on the weekend. I could take a look, if you want." He hesitated. There was something strange about the girl, this calm certainty, this unshaken confidence in the face of a man who probably made more money last quarter than her whole town combined. Finally, with a sigh of frustration more than trust, he stepped back. "Be my guest. Just don't electrocute yourself." Amaia dropped her backpack onto the dirt shoulder and opened the hood wider. The engine steamed. Her fingers moved quickly and precisely, not touching anything yet, just reading the situation. Her eyes scanned the belts, the fluid lines, the radiator cap. "You overheated about 30 minutes ago." "Yeah," she asked. The man raised an eyebrow again. "More or less. Smelled sweet, didn't it? Like syrup?" Now he looked genuinely surprised. "Yes, actually, it did." "Coolant leak," she said, pointing to a growing puddle under the passenger side. "Probably a crack in your lower hose. Pressure built up. No more coolant. Engine gets hot. Boom, shut down." The man said nothing for a moment, just stared. He was watching not just what she said, but how she said it, like she wasn't repeating something she'd heard, but explaining something she knew. "What's your name?" he asked. A little softer now. "Amaia. Amaia Foster." She extended her hand, which was already smudged with grease from touching the hood latch. He took it slowly, unsure why his fingers trembled slightly when they met hers. Declan Voss. Nice to meet you. Mr. Voss. I might be able to patch the leak so you can make it to town." She rummaged through her backpack and pulled out a roll of emergency sealing tape, an old metal wrench, and a nearly empty bottle of water. As she worked, Declan stood watching her, 1,000 thoughts spinning through his head. Her fingers moved with ease, wrapping the tape expertly, applying pressure in all the right spots. Then, as she reached up to brush her braid from her face, Declan saw something that made the world tilt. A ring. Simple. Antique gold. With a deep sapphire stone. Held in place with black thread wrapped around the base to fit her slender finger. Declan's voice dropped an octave. Where did you get that ring?" Amaia looked down at her hand casually. "It was my mom's. She gave it to me before she passed. Said it was from someone important." Declan Voss suddenly felt like the air had been pulled from the world, because he had seen that ring before, 12 years ago, on the hand of a little girl who vanished the same year his father shut down a facility in rural Georgia. Declan Voss stood frozen beside the Mustang, his breath catching somewhere between disbelief and memory. The sapphire ring, its exact cut, its antique gold setting, and that unmistakable swirl just beneath the stone was not just familiar, it was his. He had given that ring away 12 years ago, on a rainy spring morning, to a little girl at a facility few people even remembered existed. She couldn't have been older than 4 or 5, with quiet eyes and a curious spark that even back then had made her stand out. He had slipped the ring into her tiny palm with a whisper, "This is a promise. I'll come back for you." But he hadn't. She'd vanished. The facility, the Willow Grove Foundation, had been shut down less than a week later. Declan never learned why, just a terse email from his father, Victor Voss, saying the program had been terminated and all files had been sealed for legal reasons. He was young then, freshly out of grad school, more interested in acquisitions and IPOs than hidden research programs in backwoods Georgia. Now The past had caught up with him in the form of an 11-year-old girl with steady hands and grease on her face. He cleared his throat. "Your mom. Did she say where she got that ring?" Amaia glanced down at it, touching it instinctively. "No, just that it was important. Said it was from someone she trusted, a long time ago. She never took it off. I only wear it now because it reminds me of her." She didn't smile as she said it. Her tone was matter-of-fact, as if the memory still sat too close to the skin. Declan said nothing, but inside, his thoughts were chaos. Was this the same girl? Could it even be possible? "Where's your mom now?" he asked gently. "Passed last year. Heart failure. She wasn't that old, but she always said it'd catch up to her. She was a nurse, strong one. Raised me by herself. She said it plainly, without self-pity. That quiet strength again." Declan swallowed hard. "I'm sorry to hear that. Me too." She stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. "But hey, good news. The tape should hold. You've got about 30 miles before it gives again. There's a mechanic in town who can replace the hose." Declan looked down at the patch she'd made tight, clean, professional. He had seen worse work from dealership technicians. "You sure about this?" "I wouldn't lie about a car, sir," she said, with just a flicker of a smile. It was the first time he saw a glint of humor beneath the composed exterior. "Where do you live?" he asked. "I can drive you home." Amaia hesitated for the first time. A long pause. "You don't have to do that." "I want to. Least I can do." She looked into his eyes for a beat longer than expected, not with fear, but a kind of cautious intuition. Then, slowly, she nodded. "All right. I live on the edge of Marigold, Maple Street, by the old train tracks." They got in the car engine humming a little rough, but running, and started the short drive through Georgia backroads. The Mustang moved slowly across the dust-blown lanes, passing cotton fields and empty porches. Amaia leaned back, eyes on the road ahead. Declan studied her from the corner of his eye. "You said your mom was a nurse, at a clinic a few towns over. Didn't pay much, but she loved it. Said it was the only job where helping people came before profit." There was something in her voice that made the back of his neck tighten. "And your dad?" "Never met him. Mama never talked about him." She traced her thumb along the base of the ring. The thread holding it looked old, but still strong. Declan adjusted his grip on the wheel. "You ever hear of a place called Willow Grove?" She turned slowly to look at him. "Can't say I have. Why, just curious. Thought I remembered hearing the name. Long time ago. Mama used to say we lived somewhere else when I was little, but I don't remember much." Her words were soft, but Declan caught a shift in her tone. Defensive. Guarded. He let the question hang, then dropped it. They pulled up outside a small weathered house with a sun-bleached porch and a vegetable garden out back. Wind chimes rattled lazily. Declan parked and shifted into neutral. "Thank you," Amaia said, opening the door. "For the ride." "Thank you," he replied, handing her a clean business card. "If you ever need anything, anything, call this number. Doesn't matter what time." She took the card without speaking, slid it into her pocket. "Okay." As she stepped out, the late sun caught the sapphire in her ring again. Declan stared at it, paralyzed by memory. She waved once before disappearing through the front door. That night, as crickets screamed across the Georgia dark, Declan stood in his penthouse suite in downtown Atlanta, staring at a file that hadn't been opened in over a decade. A child named Amaia. Age 1 year, 9 months. Subject ID DG017. Program status Special Cognitive Index. Under observation for mechanical intuition. He picked up his phone and called his private investigator. I need you to find everything on a woman named Amaia Foster. Also, a facility called Willow Grove. Don't use my name, and keep it quiet. There was a long pause on the other end. You think this is about Project Delphi? I don't know, Declan whispered, eyes locked on the photo of the ring in the file. But I think I just met a ghost. The next morning, the world went about its business like nothing had changed. School buses creaked along dusty roads. Grocery clerks punched in. Preachers polished their Sunday sermons. But for Declan Voss, the world had shifted on its axis. He sat in his sleek glass-walled office atop the Voss Global Tower in downtown Atlanta, the city's skyline glittering behind him. Yet all he could see was the image of a little girl holding a wrench with the confidence of an engineer and wearing a ring that should have been buried in the past. His assistant, Cameron, entered quietly, a folder in her hand and concern in her eyes. She had worked for Declan for almost 10 years, seen him fire executives, close billion-dollar deals, and win brutal boardroom battles. But she'd never seen him like this, distracted, haunted. This came in overnight, she said, laying the folder on his desk. Amaia Foster, born in Macon, moved to Marigold Springs 14 years ago, changed her name shortly after resigning from a private children's health program in rural Clay County. Declan flipped through the documents, black and white photocopies of medical licenses, school forms, a pay stub from 2013. Was that health program Willow Grove Foundation? Cameron confirmed, nodding. But it wasn't a clinic, at least, not by any public definition. Declan's fingers paused on a redacted report stamped with the emblem of Project Delphi. How did she get the child? He asked softly. No official adoption records. Just a birth certificate, dated 3 months after the facility closed. It lists Amaia Foster as the mother. So, either she gave birth or forged the records to hide the girl. Cameron nodded. There's more. Willow Grove wasn't just shut down. It was erased. No remaining staff, no archives, no ownership trail. Except one thing, your father's name. Victor Voss signed the original acquisition papers when the land was purchased. Declan leaned back, exhaling hard. The air in the room felt too clean, too sterile for what he was reading. At that same moment, in a modest backyard workshop in Marigold Springs, Amaia Foster was crouched beside an old electric fan. Its blades were stuck, its wiring shot. She loved fixing things that most people would throw away. The hum of circuits, the smell of copper, it was her peace. Her neighbor, Mr. Preston, stood nearby with a cup of iced tea. That thing's been broken since the summer of '09. He chuckled. How'd you get it to spin again? Just had to clean the motor housing, Amaia replied, and rewire the switch. She didn't look up, but her tone had lost some of its usual ease. Something was bothering her. You all right? Baby girl Preston asked. Amaia wiped her hands on a rag. You ever feel like there's something everyone knows about you, but you're the only one who doesn't? The old man's expression changed. He stepped closer. What happened? I met someone yesterday. Said something weird. Asked about my ring. Preston glanced down at her hand. He had seen that ring for years, always assumed it was just a keepsake. What kind of weird? Like he recognized it. Like he'd seen it before. Amaia hesitated. Something inside her was stirring doubt, suspicion, a quiet unease she couldn't name. Mama used to say it was from someone important, but she never told me who. Preston exhaled slowly, rubbing his chin. Maybe it's time you knew more about where you came from. Back in Atlanta, Declan stood alone in the elevator descending 50 floors to the basement archive vault of Voss Global. Few people even knew it existed. The access required both biometric scan and a security code that only a handful of executives possessed, his father being one of them. The elevator doors opened to reveal rows of filing cabinets and encrypted servers, all dimly lit and chilled like a museum for dangerous secrets. He walked to the W section, Willow Grove, inside a locked drawer. He found what he was looking for: Project Delphi dossiers, child profiles, psychological assessments, IQ testing, motor skill charts, cognitive tracking. He pulled out one file, DG-017, Amaia Foster, name and admission, Amaia R. Date of birth estimated, parental status unknown, classified talent mechanical synthesis and intuitive cognition, notes scribbled in the margins, repairs complex objects without instruction, no formal training, behavioral profile reserved, observant, high empathy, recommend further analysis under closed conditions. Another note, hastily circled in red, risk of bonding. Removed from study group immediately if attachment forms. Signed, Victor Voss. Declan's stomach turned. He remembered now his father had warned him back then that emotional ties compromised research outcomes. But Declan hadn't listened. He had brought toys to the children, spoken with them, promised one of them a future. And now she was back with the same ring he'd given her the day the lab shut down. Later that evening, Cameron met him in his apartment. She looked worried. "You were right to keep this quiet. But I have to warn you, if your father catches wind of what you're digging into, it won't be pretty." Declan looked up from the file. He used those children, experimented on them, and then buried it. You think he'll let you unbury it? He doesn't get a choice. He stood and walked to the window, watching the Atlanta lights shimmer like stars that had learned how to lie. That girl, she's not just part of the past. She's proof it existed. Meanwhile, back in Marigold Springs, Amaia lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The ring rested lightly on her chest. She couldn't sleep. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "If anyone ever comes looking for you, trust your instincts, not their words." She whispered into the dark mama, "Who am I? Really?" And for the first time, she realized she might not want the answer. 2 days later, a gray envelope arrived for Amaia Foster. It was left on the porch, addressed in neat handwriting. No return address, no stamp, just her name. Her heart thudded the moment she saw it. Inside was a faded cassette tape wrapped in a cloth handkerchief and a note in her mother's handwriting. "Amaia, if you're reading this, it means someone found you. And it's time you heard the truth." Her hands trembled. She slipped the tape into an old player in the garage. The machine whirred to life, coughing through static until her mother's voice emerged, warm and a little tired. "My beautiful girl. I never told you everything. I was afraid. Not of you, never of you, but of what they'd do if they ever found us." Amaia sank to the concrete floor as the tape played. "You were part of something once, before I ran, before I became your mother. You were in a place called Willow Grove. It wasn't an orphanage, not really. It was a testing ground, a project funded by men who saw children as opportunities, not people." There was a pause, and then the voice returned, more fragile now. "They didn't expect someone like you. Amaia, so young, yet already extraordinary. You fixed things that even the engineers couldn't. They called it intuition, but it was more than that. It was your gift." Amaia's throat tightened. "I couldn't watch them take you apart. bit by bit. So I ran, took you in the middle of the night, changed both our names, burned the files I could, and vanished. It's why we never stayed in one place too long. Why I never told you about your father, because even I don't know who he really was." The tape crackled for a moment. "If someone's found you now, it means the past is back, and they'll come with questions. But remember the ring on your finger. It's more than a keepsake. Twist the sapphire clockwise, twice. Inside, you'll find what they never wanted you to see." The tape stopped. Amaia stared at the ring, stunned. She held it up, then slowly turned the gem. Once, twice, a tiny click. The stone popped open, revealing a barely visible microchip tucked inside the hollow setting. She didn't know exactly what it was, but she knew it was important and dangerous. In Atlanta, Declan Voss met with his father for the first time in years. Victor Voss hadn't aged kindly. His hair was white, his jaw set like granite. They met in a private conference room at Voss Global Sterile, silent, thick with unspoken tension. "You've been looking into Willow Grove," Victor said. "No pleasantries. You knew she survived." Declan shot back. "Amaia, you knew she was out there." Victor didn't blink. She was a valuable subject. We had to assume someone would try to hide her. Her cognitive scores were off the charts. The military was interested. Private biotech firms, too. You don't just lose an asset like that. Declan's jaw clenched. "She's not an asset. She's a child. She's a liability." "Declan," Victor snapped, "if she still has access to the Data Project Delphi, subject index files, experimental models we could be exposed, you have no idea how far this goes." Declan stood up. "You were willing to experiment on children. For what patents, military contracts? For innovation. For legacy. Your legacy ends now." Victor leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Don't be naive. You're still sitting in the chair I built. The world we live in isn't built on virtue. It's built on leverage." Declan didn't respond. He simply walked out, fists tight at his sides. Back in Marigold Springs, Amaia took the chip to Mr. Preston, who once worked with her mother at the Willow Grove facility before its collapse. He examined the ring beneath a magnifier, then looked up, pale. "This is a data capsule, military grade. Only high-level research ever used these." "Can you read it?" Amaia asked. "Not me, but I know someone who can. A reporter named Gwen Hale. She's been chasing rumors of the Delphi program for years." Preston hesitated. "Amaia, once you open this door, there's no turning back." "I know," she said quietly, "but I need to know what they did to me." That night, Amaia couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her fingers curled around the ring like a lifeline. What if I'm not who I thought I was? What if everything I've done, everything I've fixed, was never mine? Was I made for something or stolen for something? The thought terrified her. But it also fueled something else. Resolve. Meanwhile, Gwen Hale met with Declan in secret. "I've been trying to crack Delphi for a decade." She told him, but it always disappeared before I got close. Then 3 staffers vanished. Another accidental fire. And now you're handing me evidence Declan gave her the file. And there's more. I think the girl they call DG017, she's alive. She has the ring and the data chip. Gwen's eyes widened. "If we go public with this, we won't get a second chance," Declan said. "So we need to do it right. What's your angle?" "Voss. You trying to save your soul?" Declan stared out at the city skyline. "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just finally doing what I should have done 12 years ago." At sunrise, Amaia stood outside her house, watching the light bleed over the fields. She held her mother's last letter in one hand and the chip in the other. "They thought they buried me," she whispered, "but they didn't know I'm a seed." The conference room on the 61st floor of Voss Global Headquarters hadn't felt tension like this in years. Executives fidgeted in their leather chairs. Lawyers whispered across the table. The walls of floor-to-ceiling glass glowed gold in the afternoon sun, but the atmosphere inside was frigid. Victor Voss stood at the head of the long table, eyes steely, posture rigid. "Where is my son?" he barked. Someone cleared their throat. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. Declan Voss entered, calm and composed, dressed not in a suit, but in a plain button-down and jeans. Behind him walked Gwen Hale, the reporter. In her hand was a worn leather briefcase. Victor's eyes narrowed. "You have 5 seconds to explain this circus." "No need," Declan replied. "The presentation will speak for itself." He moved to the touchscreen panel and projected a file onto the main display. Project Delphi Internal Memoranda. Class B, clearance only. Murmurs rippled across the room. Gwen stepped forward and began to speak, her voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have documentation detailing over a decade of unethical research practices, unauthorized child experiments, altered adoption records, and data concealment tied to the Delphi program, all under the oversight of Victor Voss." Victor's fist hit the table so hard the glasses shook. "This is defamation, lies, fabricated nonsense." "There's a recording," Declan said quietly. He tapped the screen again. Audio played. Victor's voice, from years ago, crackled through the speakers. "You don't need consent if no one ever finds out. These children aren't students. They're prototypes. When we isolate the neurological patterns, we can reproduce them artificially. No more flukes. Only outcomes. Silence. Then gasp." One of the board members pushed away from the table. "Jesus." Victor's eyes darted toward his son. "You stole those files." "No," Declan said. "I recovered them. From your vault. The one you told me never to enter." "I kept wondering why," Gwen added. "And we've already sent the files to the Federal Investigative Committee and to 3 news outlets. They'll go live by sundown." Victor's voice dropped an octave. "You're ending the company." "Declan." "No," Declan replied. "You did that the moment you thought children were data points." Then soft footsteps echoed behind them. The door opened once more. Amaia Foster walked in. She wore a simple yellow hoodie and jeans, her braid pulled back neatly. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried storms. Everyone turned to stare. "Who is she?" one executive whispered. Victor stared, stunned. "DG0 Santin," he muttered. You took everything from my mother," Amaia said, voice low and unwavering. "You turned children into numbers, and you tried to erase me. You're here because of what I built." Victor spat. "Without us, you'd still be ordinary." "Without you," she said coldly, "my mother wouldn't have died afraid." She reached into her pocket and held up the ring. Slowly, she twisted the sapphire again once, twice, and pulled free the microchip inside. "This contains everything you tried to hide. Audio logs, test results, lists of children. Some of them are still alive. Some didn't make it." She walked forward and handed the chip to Gwen. "It's yours now." Victor surged forward, but 2 federal agents stepped through the doors just in time. "Victor Voss," one of them said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, illegal human research, obstruction of justice, Victor lunged, but it was too late. As the cuffs clicked shut, he looked back at Amaia with something between hatred and awe. "You think this changes anything?" "Yes," she replied, "because I'm not a product. I'm a person." And so were they. The elevator doors closed behind them. Later that evening, Declan stood on the roof of the tower, watching the Atlanta skyline flicker as the headlines went live. Voss Global, tied to child experimentation scandal. Delphi project exposed by whistleblower and Survivor CEO. Arrested following release of secret files. He didn't smile. The price had been high. His inheritance, his reputation, the legacy he'd spent his life protecting gone. But something deeper remained. A strange peace. Behind him, Amaia walked quietly onto the rooftop, standing beside him. "Why'd you do it?" she asked. "Because I promised someone a long time ago that I'd come back." She looked at him, thoughtful. "I don't remember you." "Not really." "That's okay," he said. "Maybe I wasn't worth remembering." They stood in silence for a moment, the wind tugging at their sleeves. "I kept thinking I was broken," she said, "that I didn't come from anywhere, that maybe I was made for something terrible." "You weren't made for anything," Declan said softly. "You made yourself." Amaia's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "You think it's over?" "No," he said. "I think it's just beginning." That night, on the national news, Gwen Hale appeared on screen, standing outside the courthouse. The story of Amaia Foster is more than a tale of survival. It's a reckoning, one that forces us to ask, who do we protect and who do we exploit in the name of progress? 5 years later. The building that once housed Willow Grove Foundation had been torn down to its last brick. In its place stood a shining 2-story center made of glass, wood, and light, the Amaia Foster Institute for Young Innovators. Children laughed in the garden, raced down ramps with tablet-powered cars they had designed themselves, and soldered small robots in clean, bright workshops filled with tools once out of reach. Inside, Amaia, now 16, walked confidently down a hallway lined with displays of invention and resilience. She wore jeans and a soft blue t-shirt that read, "Build, break, begin again." Her braid was longer now, still wild at the ends, and her ring, still bearing the sapphire, now sat on a silver chain around her neck. No longer hidden, no longer a secret. "Sensors in the East Lab are glitching again," one of the teen engineers reported, jogging up beside her. Amaia nodded. "Could be a wiring issue, or static discharge from the AI cores. Let's check both." She hadn't just survived her past, she had redesigned it. At the back of the center, near a wide veranda overlooking what had once been the Willow Grove courtyard, Declan Voss stood with a group of donors and education advocates. He no longer looked like a man from Forbes magazine. His suit had been traded for rolled sleeves and worn leather boots. His fortune, once part of a corporate empire, now funded the Prometheus program, a nationwide initiative offering full scholarships and mentorship to kids from underserved communities with talents the world often ignored. "We've found 27 kids this quarter alone," he told the group, "some with raw math ability, others with unique mechanical intuition. They don't belong to anyone. They don't owe us anything. They just need space to grow." He smiled as he watched Amaia cross the room, now surrounded by students, and she reminds them, he added, that broken things can be rebuilt into something beautiful. Later that afternoon, the Institute held its first full graduation ceremony. 12 students, some refugees, some formerly homeless. One born inside the juvenile system crossed the stage. Each had at least one job offer or a college scholarship in hand. The final speaker was Amaia. She stood at the podium, calm but radiant, the late sun casting long golden shadows across the floor. She held the ring gently in her hand, letting it catch the light. "When I was 11, she began. I fixed a stranger's car on the side of a road. I walked every day. I didn't know then that the car, the ring I wore, the man in the suit, all of it was part of a truth waiting to catch up with me. A truth that nearly broke me. But it also helped me understand something." She paused, searching for the words, but they came like breath. We don't get to choose how our stories begin, but we do get to choose what we build from the wreckage. The audience was silent. A few eyes shimmered. This place used to be a secret, a place where kids were studied instead of loved, where curiosity was captured instead of nurtured. But now, she turned, gesturing to the space around her. "Now it's ours. And the only thing being tested here is the strength of imagination." The room erupted in applause. That evening, Amaia sat with Mr. Preston, now retired and full of gentle mischief, on a bench beneath a magnolia tree outside the center. "Your mother would have wept seeing this," he said. "Sometimes I still hear her," Amaia replied, "especially when I fix something no one else can. It's like she's whispering the answers." He chuckled softly. "Well, that's called being raised right." They watched as younger students kicked a soccer ball across the lawn, squealing with joy. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "why people like Declan Voss thought power came from control?" Preston nodded slowly. "Because they never felt loved unless they were feared. That kind of man is always afraid of something softer being stronger than him." Amaia nodded. "Then I guess we proved him wrong." A week later, a letter arrived, handwritten. The return address, Victoria Voss, Victor's daughter and now a federal prosecutor who had distanced herself completely from the Voss name after the trial. "Dear Amaia, we've identified 4 more facilities like Willow Grove. Thanks to the data you uncovered and your testimony, we've already relocated 37 children to safe environments, some with remarkable abilities, like yours. They would love to meet you someday. When you're ready. With admiration, Victoria." Amaia folded the letter slowly. She looked out at the garden where her students played. For the first time in a long time, her past didn't feel like a shadow, but a blueprint. "Let's go find the others," she whispered. As the sun dipped low, Declan joined her by the garden's edge. "Think we really changed anything?" he asked. Amaia smiled faintly, eyes fixed on the horizon. "You once told me I made myself, and you did. Well," she said, "now I get to help others do the same." They stood in silence. Then the lights turned on at the entrance, illuminating the engraved sign. Every child deserves freedom. Every talent deserves to grow. And somewhere far away, in a government facility being quietly dismantled, someone clicked off the final server linked to Project Delphi. The past had finally been buried, but the seeds of the future had already taken root. Not every child gets to choose where they come from, but every child deserves the freedom to become who they're meant to be. Amaia Foster's story is more than just about courage. It's a reminder of what happens when compassion meets injustice and refuses to back down. She wasn't rich, she wasn't powerful, but she had something stronger, the ability to see value where others only saw vulnerability. And in a world that too often labels kids by their zip code, their skin color, or the weight of their last name, Amaia proved that true strength comes not from privilege, but from purpose. Let this story be a wake-up call to the systems that forget, to the people who look away, to the voices silenced by power, and the talents buried by prejudice, but also let it be a celebration of the resilience in every underdog, of the quiet brilliance in overlooked places, of the girl who turned a broken car into a path to justice. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories just like this, where courage rises, truth speaks, and healing begins. Until next time, keep believing in the ones the world overlooks. Their stories might just change everything.